The distress signal had been faint, barely registering on Eli Mercer's scanner, but curiosity, an instinct, pulled him toward the coordinates. A massive ship, long abandoned and drifting silently in the void, loomed before him. Its hull was scarred, windows shattered, lights dead. Something about it screamed danger, yet Eli's fingers itched to investigate. He docked carefully, the metal groaning under his weight as he stepped inside. Shadows clung to every corner, broken panels and sparking wires making the corridors feel alive with menace. Then, movement, a faint twitch in the darkness, caught his eye. Eli froze. It was small, fragile, something had been left behind. As he stepped closer, a whimper echoed through the empty hall. There, huddled beneath a fallen beam, was a tiny creature, a malnourished albino wolf, its fur ghostly white, eyes wide and trembling. Its ribs were visible, and it seemed barely able to lift its head. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. The ship had abandoned it, yet here it was, waiting, alone. Eli's pulse quickened. He had no idea if the creature was dangerous, or if it even understood him, but something in those glowing eyes told him this wolf had nowhere else to go. And in that moment, Eli made a decision: he wouldn't leave it behind. Eli Mercer froze in the shadowed corridor, his eyes locked on the trembling shape huddled beneath the fallen beam. The faint glow of the wolf's pale, almost luminescent eyes reflected in the dim emergency lights of the derelict ship. He could feel the weight of the silence pressing in on him, each heartbeat echoing unnaturally in the metallic corridors. Something about the way the creature moved, tentative, shivering, yet alert, made his skin crawl and tingle at the same time. He took a cautious step forward, his boots scraping softly against the cold metal floor. "Hey, it's okay," he whispered, unsure if the wolf could understand his words. The sound of his own voice startled him more than the creature, yet the wolf flinched slightly but did not run. Its eyes followed every movement, calculating, wary. Eli held his breath. The wolf was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its fur was so pale it almost seemed to glow, and its frame was unnaturally thin, the sharp contours of its ribs visible beneath the skin. Yet there was an intelligence in its gaze, an awareness that made Eli realize this wasn't just a wild animal, this was something more. Something alien. Its ears twitched toward him, sniffing the air, and for a moment, Eli could swear the wolf understood the danger of its own situation. He crouched slowly, keeping his movements deliberate, hands open and visible. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said again, this time louder, letting the echo carry down the empty corridor. The wolf's tail, a ghostly brush of white fur, twitched nervously. It let out a low, almost mournful whine, a sound that echoed like a warning and a plea all at once. Eli's chest tightened. He knew this creature had been left behind, abandoned. Alone. He could almost feel the story of neglect written in the wolf's every shiver, every hesitant glance. Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out a small energy pack, his standard field ration for emergencies. He set it gently on the floor, a cautious offering. The wolf's eyes darted between him and the pack, its muscles coiled with instinct. It inched forward slowly, sniffing the air, every movement tense with caution. He remained still, letting it decide, holding his breath. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the wolf's nose touched the edge of the pack. Its trembling eased slightly, but the tension in its body remained, a taut wire ready to snap. Eli whispered softly, "Good, good." He could feel the trust forming in fragile increments, a bond forged in shared vulnerability. The creature was wary, yes, but alive, and it recognized that he was the only thing standing between it and certain death. Suddenly, a groan of metal echoed through the corridor. Something shifted in the ship, an airlock? A failing panel? The wolf startled, yipping sharply, and scrambled back under the beam. Eli's pulse quickened. The ship was unstable. He couldn't stay here long, not with this fragile creature exposed to collapsing structures, low oxygen, and potential predators or hazards he couldn't even see. He took a deep breath and moved a step closer, keeping his voice calm. "I'm here to help. I won't leave you." The wolf's glowing eyes met his, and in that brief moment, Eli could feel a connection, a silent understanding that, for now, they were allies against the cold emptiness of this abandoned ship. Carefully, he extended a hand. Not to grab, not to force, just to show he was present. The wolf's ears flattened, its body tense, but it didn't flee. Slowly, it inched forward, sniffing his fingers, then recoiled. Patience. Eli knew it would take time. But already, in the quiet of that dying vessel, the first seeds of trust were planted. And Eli knew that whatever it took, whatever dangers the ship or the void beyond might throw at him, he was going to save this alien wolf. because leaving it behind was no longer an option. Eli Mercer took a deep breath, feeling the metallic chill of the abandoned ship seep into his bones. He glanced down at the wolf, curled up in a tiny huddle under the beam. Its white fur was matted with dust and grime, and each shallow breath reminded him how fragile it really was. The derelict vessel groaned and creaked around them, a warning that time was running out. Staying here much longer wasn't just dangerous, it was deadly. He crouched beside the creature, speaking softly. "Okay, we're getting out of here. You with me?" The wolf's luminous eyes flicked toward him but didn't move. Eli knew he had to earn its trust completely before making any sudden moves. One wrong step and the creature could bolt, or worse, hurt itself. He surveyed the hallway. Debris littered the floor, torn panels, exposed wiring sparking intermittently, and a layer of grime that made every step a potential hazard. The ship had been abandoned for months, maybe years, and every corner seemed ready to collapse. Eli knew this wasn't just a rescue, it was a careful extraction from a graveyard of steel and danger. The first step, he decided, was to stabilize the wolf. He gently lifted it into his arms. Its weight was surprisingly light, the bones beneath its fur thin but strong, a body starved yet resilient. The wolf tensed at first, claws brushing against his jacket, but Eli held it firmly and murmured, "It's okay? I've got you." The creature's trembling slowed, though the tension in its tail and ears remained, like a wire-strung taut. Eli moved cautiously down the corridor, testing each step before putting his weight on it. The ship groaned ominously with every creak. A panel above their heads rattled and fell a few inches too close for comfort. The wolf yipped sharply, startled, but Eli didn't falter. One slow, steady step at a time, he advanced, keeping the creature close to his chest, talking to it in a low, steady voice that cut through the eerie silence. He reached a junction where several corridors converged, the navigation system flickering weakly. Eli squinted at his scanner, mapping the safest route back to his ship. Every option was risky. One passage had exposed wiring sparking dangerously, another had a weakened floor that groaned ominously under his weight. But he had no choice. The wolf couldn't survive on its own here, and he couldn't leave without risking collapse. A sudden rumble made the lights flicker. Dust rained from the ceiling, and a panel clattered across the floor just inches from their feet. The wolf hissed, a sharp, alien sound that sent shivers down Eli's spine. He froze, heart pounding, listening. The ship was alive in its own way, threatening, unpredictable, and utterly unforgiving. Eli decided on a path along the central support corridor. It was narrow but structurally sound, a skeleton of metal beams that had held up against the void for longer than anyone had expected. With careful steps and whispered reassurances, he navigated past loose cables and fallen debris, the wolf clinging cautiously to his chest. Every step was a delicate negotiation with gravity, with the ship, with the fragile life in his arms. As he approached the exit airlock, relief almost overcame him, but then a loud bang echoed through the vessel. A wall panel had collapsed somewhere deeper inside, sending a chain reaction of vibrations. The wolf stiffened, ears flattened, eyes glowing brighter. Eli tightened his hold and whispered, "Almost there, just a little farther." Finally, the faint lights of his own ship appeared through the viewport. His heart leapt. They were close. But the wolf, sensing freedom and yet still terrified, struggled, claws scraping his jacket. Eli whispered soothingly, stroking its fur, grounding it in his presence. The bond between them had grown fragile but real, a connection forged in fear, desperation, and the shared will to survive. With one final careful step, Eli reached the airlock. He activated the controls, the door sliding open with a hiss. The wolf's ears twitched nervously, but it didn't bolt. Eli stepped through first, then guided the creature safely onto the deck of his ship. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the wolf could relax, even just a little. Eli lowered it onto a padded section of the floor, watching it curl up, still wary but alive. He exhaled slowly, feeling both exhaustion and relief. The first step in their journey, rescue, was complete. But the wolf wasn't safe yet. Its malnourished body needed care, and the challenges of the void were far from over. For now, though, Eli allowed himself a brief moment of victory. They had survived the abandoned ship together, and that fragile connection, born of trust and courage, was the only thing standing between life and the cold emptiness of space. Eli Mercer's hands shook slightly as he secured the wolf in the padded containment section of his ship. Its fragile body rose and fell with each shallow breath, the faint glow of its pale eyes casting an eerie light across the walls. The relief of leaving the derelict ship behind was fleeting. The wolf wasn't safe yet, not by a long shot. Space itself was a threat, unpredictable, merciless, and indifferent to survival. He tapped the console, double-checking the ship's systems. Oxygen levels were stable, life support functioning, but one panel flashed red, an engine vent had overheated. A small explosion could mean disaster, and the wolf's frail body wouldn't survive even a minor mishap. Eli tightened his grip on the controls, forcing calm as he maneuvered the ship away from the debris field surrounding the derelict vessel. The wolf watched him with unblinking eyes, ears twitching at every sound, the hum of the engines, the faint vibration of the hull, the occasional creak that reminded Eli the ship itself was alive and unpredictable. He spoke softly, knowing that his voice was the only constant in the alien creature's experience. "We're almost clear, just a little farther. You're safe with me." Minutes stretched into an eternity as he navigated through the scattered remnants of the abandoned shipyard. Sensors picked up drifting fragments, unstable asteroids, and even a small energy burst from a nearby derelict satellite. Eli swerved to avoid collisions, the wolf instinctively curling closer, its body pressing against him as if sensing his focus and determination. The bond between them was growing in silence, formed in fear and shared survival rather than words. Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared, an uncharted debris field appeared on the sensors, moving faster than expected. Eli's pulse spiked. "Hold on," he muttered, fingers flying over the controls. He twisted the ship, dodging massive fragments that would have torn a lesser vessel apart. The wolf yipped sharply, claws bracing against the containment padding, but did not panic. Eli could feel its tension, a mirror of his own, but also a growing trust in his ability to protect it. One fragment, a jagged piece of metal from a destroyed hull, scraped dangerously close to the ship's side. Eli flinched but managed to steer just in time. The wolf's fur bristled, eyes wide with alarm. He whispered, "It's okay, almost past it." His heart hammered as they cleared the danger, and for a moment, silence returned, broken only by the low hum of the engines. The wolf's breathing gradually slowed, and it lifted its head slightly, studying Eli with curious, intelligent eyes. There was something almost human in its gaze, a recognition of the risk he had taken, the courage he had shown. Eli felt a strange warmth in his chest, a connection deeper than anything he had expected from a creature so alien. "You're stronger than you look," he murmured, reaching to stroke its fur. The wolf leaned into his hand, a small gesture of trust, almost a thank you. But danger was never far behind. Another warning light flashed, the life support vent was failing, the temperature in the containment area dropping. Eli worked quickly, rerouting power, improvising repairs mid-flight. The wolf shivered as cold air brushed its pale fur, and Eli pressed a makeshift blanket around it, murmuring reassurances. The small gestures mattered, they were survival, comfort, and connection all in one. Hours passed. The wolf rested more easily now, trusting Eli enough to let its guard down, though its body remained weak. They drifted through the dark expanse of space, navigating hazards, evading debris, and slowly putting distance between themselves and the abandoned ship. Each moment of calm was a temporary victory, each successful maneuver a small reassurance that they could survive together. Eli leaned back, exhaustion heavy in his limbs, but his gaze remained on the wolf. Despite the danger, despite the endless void surrounding them, he felt a spark of hope. They were no longer two isolated beings, abandoned and alone. They were allies, bonded in survival, facing the void together. For the first time since the rescue began, Eli allowed himself a faint smile. The wolf stirred, eyes glowing softly, a quiet affirmation of the fragile trust between them. They were still vulnerable, still at risk, but together they had overcome the first trial of the journey. And Eli knew this, the real challenge wasn't over. The universe had more dangers waiting, more tests of courage and endurance. But for now, in the hum of the ship and the quiet presence of the albino wolf, survival felt possible. Eli Mercer finally allowed himself to exhale. The ship hummed quietly now, all systems stable, the dangerous debris behind them left far in the void. He knelt beside the wolf, still curled up on the padded deck, its pale body fragile and trembling lightly. For the first time, Eli could study it without immediate danger pressing from every angle. Its fur, once matted with grime and dust, now caught the soft light of the ship's interior, giving it an almost ethereal glow. "All right," he whispered, reaching for the medical kit he had salvaged from the derelict vessel. Carefully, he began tending to the wounds and scratches he had noticed on its thin limbs. The wolf flinched at first, unsure of these new movements, but Eli spoke softly, letting his voice be a tether. "It's okay, just trust me." The wolf's eyes followed every motion, glowing faintly in the dim light. It had grown used to his presence during the perilous journey, But this was a different kind of trial, slow, gentle, and patient. Eli cleaned each scrape, applied salves, and fed it small portions of nutrient gel, carefully watching for any reaction. With each bite, the wolf grew a little stronger, its trembling easing. Hours turned into days, and with each passing moment, the bond between them deepened. The wolf began to respond to Eli's gestures, nudging him for comfort, leaning into his hands, even resting its head briefly against his shoulder. Its eyes, once wide with fear and suspicion, now held recognition, trust, and even a hint of curiosity. Eli named it NYX, after the shadows that had once threatened its life but which they had both survived together. NYX's alien features were still otherworldly, delicate, sharp, and ghostly, but the loyalty it began to show was unmistakable. Eli smiled for the first time in days, a genuine warmth spreading through him. This wasn't just a rescue, it was the start of something enduring, a partnership forged in adversity. But healing wasn't only physical. Eli knew the wolf had suffered loneliness, hunger, and the terror of abandonment. So he spent hours simply sitting with NYX, speaking to it, letting it acclimate to the steady rhythm of life aboard a functioning ship. Slowly, NYX began to explore, testing the boundaries of its new home, sniffing consoles, padding softly across the floor, ears twitching at the hum of machinery. Each small gesture was a victory, proof that the wolf could adapt, and that trust could grow even after betrayal. One evening, as the ship glided silently through the stars, Eli sat beside NYX, watching the alien light of distant nebulae reflect in its eyes. "We made it," he murmured. "Against everything, we made it." The wolf lifted its head, meeting his gaze, and in that silent connection, there was understanding, a bond beyond words, beyond species, born of survival, courage, and compassion. Eli knew there would be more challenges ahead. Space was unpredictable, and NYX was still recovering from the neglect it had suffered. But for now, they had each other, and that was enough. The once abandoned albino wolf was no longer a victim of circumstance, it had a protector, a companion, and a future. In the quiet of the ship, with the stars stretching endlessly outside the viewport, Eli felt hope bloom. For both of them, the nightmare of abandonment was over. The journey had forged them into a team, a duo capable of facing the unknown. And as NYX curled up against him, breathing easier with each passing moment, Eli understood something profound. Survival wasn't just about escaping danger, it was about finding connection, trust, and the courage to care. Together, human and alien wolf faced the vastness of space, not as lost and abandoned beings, but as companions bound by the trials they had endured. And in that bond, a new beginning had truly begun.